Greetings, I'm Dike Rostant. Welcome back to the TTT News. Love is a many splendid thing, and we are going in-depth on the psychology of love with Managing Director, Wholeness and Wellness Counselling, Dr. Tracie Rogers. Welcome, Dr. Rogers, and we want to start off by asking for some insight into the organization and the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me here today. So Wholeness and Wellness Counseling Services has been around for 6 years. We're a group of professional therapists. We are a combination of clinical social workers, psychologists, counseling psychologists. And basically our focus is working with individuals and couples on mental health issues. Yeah, so just a range of mental health issues from anxiety, depression, and a good bit of our work focuses on couples relationship therapy.
And how easy or hard is it to manage an enterprise like that? The last time, I saw you post something and someone say, I feel like you're throwing stone in my garden. And but what is that like dealing with professionals of this nature?
Yeah, I feel as though a lot of people, when they work on an instrument. When therapists work, we are instruments. So we really bring that to the table. So we're a group of professionals who are very much committed to working with people to improve our lived experiences. And we're also working through our experiences ourselves. Yeah. So it is not always easy work, but it's always rewarding and fulfilling work.
And what is it like being these vessels, but at the same time you're also humans having a human experience? How do you deal? Is it that you share with each other, you find people outside of the organization? Because too much of one thing is good for nothing, and I'm sure you'll need to lay some of these things down in order to move forward.
So, I'm so glad you're asking me that question, because it's a combination of things. So in addition to the work that we do, we're also involved in peer supervision. So we meet to discuss not the details of our clients, because that's confidential, and we do not share those details, but amongst ourselves, we will meet to discuss probably challenging cases that we have. We're also very much invested in continuing development. So getting a master's degree or a PhD doesn't mean that you're fully qualified. Behavioral science is constantly changing, and we want to make sure that we're on top of what's happening in terms of new theories, new techniques in neuroscience, in behavioral science, in cognitive science, in understanding emotion and behavior. So it's about professional development always. It's about working through our cases, but it's also about managing ourselves. We talk to clients all the time about having boundaries, and it's also very important that we have boundaries, that we know that we are human beings who at times need some of the very medicine that we're in the business of facilitating. So it's constant work.
Almost like physician, heal thyself. but at this point,
the work starts with you, always.
Definitely. But right now, in terms of time, there are a lot of flowers and teddy bears being sold. So I want us to dive into the psychology of love. When I give that phrase, what are some of the things that come to mind that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think about trust. I think about intimacy, and I also think about understanding love on our terms. So a lot of us are flooded with messages about love from international sources and from the global world that we're constantly interacting with. But I am interested in how do we understand love as Trinidadians and Tobagonians, as Caribbean people, as Black people, as people who have a very unique experience of the world. And I often think that the basis of love is trust and its intimacy. More than that, a lot of us are preoccupied with finding somebody to be in love with instead of starting by being someone we love. And I think the work of being partnered is always about learning to love and appreciate yourself. Because certainly when you walk into a relationship with a lack of that love for yourself, it ain't gonna work no other way. So trust and what trust is, and intimacy beyond sexuality. There are many types of intimacy. A lot of times when we think about intimacy, we think about sexual intimacy or even physical intimacy. but there's spiritual intimacy, there's intellectual intimacy, there is intimacy around just really touching and feeling and experiencing each other. And I think particularly now as we go through the pandemic, which is such a traumatic and traumatizing experience for us, that more than ever, we need to really ensure that we engage in all types of intimacies.
And that brings to mind a line from Mumu Fresh. She says she's a sapiosexual, she loves an intellectual. But looking at the fact that it seems as though there may be different manifestations and permutations of love, especially during the disruption of the pandemic. What are some of those building blocks that you say, okay, well, possibly these are things that we can check off? You spoke about trust, you spoke about intimacy. And how do we scaffold that around a relationship?
Yeah. First of all, to just acknowledge that what we are experiencing now is an abnormal experience. So our responses to this abnormal experience or normal experience to abnormal event. And that might seem like semantics, but it helps us to really understand the context of which we're operating in. So we're in this strange time that has no precedent. So there's really no precedent to say this is how you should be. So I think transparency in terms of how we're coping, in terms of how we're struggling, in terms of the fact that we live together, but we might need to find ways to have space from each other. Some of us are dating in the pandemic and we have to start that in a totally different way. So I think transparency and just naming and acknowledging where you are, what your feelings, and what are some of the difficult things that you're dealing with. I think we also need to get very intentional. We should always be intentional about relationships, but we also need to get very intentional about how we meet and relate. Because we are in a pandemic, some of us, we've had to stretch our imagination a bit to think about what are some of these things that we can do together. What are some of the ways in which we can invite someone to get to know us when we have to have some distance between us.
And definitely that is something. So keeping those fires burning in a long-term relationship when it seems as though, well, let me not put words in your mouth. What are some of those ways that you consistently find new things, discover or plumb new depths in that love for that relationship to stand the test of time?
Yeah. I'm hearing what you're asking me, and I think, your relationship is also an extension of you. A lot of us have this notion that we find a relationship that will complete us. But the fact of the matter is that we need to work on being a complete person on our own, right? So what are some of the things that you are doing right now to express yourself, to cope, and then invite your partner to be part of that experience, as opposed to looking at something artificial? Like sometimes we look at it as something we need to do. Yeah. But what are the things that you are doing now? What are the things that you're curious about? That you want to get to learn more about? How about inviting your partner to walk in that experience with you? And it could be just anything, but really stop thinking about it as something that's artificial that I need to bring into this space. But how is this an extension of myself? Because that's what the only thing that you can really sustain is authenticity. Pretending to be something else is not sustainable. And it's just a matter of time before that relationship feels like work, like a task, So your task is living. How am I inviting this person to live with me? Now, you might realize that this person can't live with me. And you know what? The sooner you realize that, the better. That's a gift as well. That's an opportunity.
According to some people, you fail fast while moving forward. But definitely that shadow work that you're speaking about, I want to continue the conversation along those lines when we return. But right now we have some Drew featuring Turner, Beloved. Stay with us. We can return with more.
When things get hard and times get lonely, you always hold me down. Hold me down. Yeah, you try. You make me change my life. A life full of sin. That's a win. So I'll try. Do my best to treat
you. Cause you are my everything, and I'm gonna do anything. Go put that on everything, oh, for you. If I give you all my love, and would you treasure? Would you cherish it and never let me go? Cause you're not gonna find someone to love you better. Oh, if I want to, then for certain I want to. You make I go love you,
Welcome back. We ended the first half of the conversation with Ricardo Drew and Turner. Now we're coming back with some Patsy. I don't know if that was intentional, but one of the things that you spoke about, Dr. Tracie Rogers, was the fact that we need to be intentional with ourselves. And in terms of those kind of unarticulated emotions, things that we have not necessarily taken the time, because before the disruption, it was very easy to distract ourselves and find, okay, well, I don't want to deal with this, so let me find something else to deal with. But as it's like the song says, I've been to everywhere, but I haven't been to me. Loving yourself, doing that, and becoming that love that you seek. How important is that to the overall equation?
You know, it is the most important ingredient. Sometimes we think that love is this end product, and we become very performative. So we're performing this relationship, and we're performing it. It has to look this way and do this, and it must sound this way, and we must have roses and flowers and all of those good things. However, if love essentially is about connectivity, and as human beings, we are wired for connection. Anybody who says they can do it alone is lying to themselves and everybody else. We are wired to do this thing together. Now, figuring out the person that works for us, and the person that works with our nervous system, the person that is that person that we can walk through life with or part of life with, that becomes the task. And you know, you said something that really struck me, this idea that unexpressed emotion is not benign. Just because I didn't name it and say it doesn't mean that it's just there and it's not doing anything. Unexpressed emotion, it festers, it grows, you know, and that eventually is going to disrupt my relationship. So how do I find and create a safe space so that I can name things, I can say how I feel? And you really want to find somebody who, as David Rogers says, could hold all your unlovelies. You know, who is that person that I can say, these are my unlovelies, and they can walk with me? And building to that is the important thing, because some of us get into relationships and we say we're being vulnerable, but we're really oversharing. And we're not really allowing that person to earn the right to hear our stories. And so at the end of the day, we go into these relationships, we exhaust ourselves. I tell somebody all these things about me. I'm working on an end product, but I'm not really in the process. And when you're in the process, you also need to be open to when it's time to exit the process, you know? We need to really confront these ideas that we've been sold about what a relationship should be, because oftentimes it gets in the way of what could be.
But how do you confront those ideas when you're already in a relationship, but at the same time you've entered that relationship in a performative way like you've described? Or possibly, I don't know if you're doing it for the gram, but unlearning those kind of things and building your narrative that is authentic to you and the person that you're in that relationship with.
Yeah, you have to get real. You have to get real. So there needs to be a safe space to do that. So you may opt, for instance, to do relationship counseling, which essentially is working with a professional who can hold that space for you to do it. But that's not the only way you can do it. If there is some of us in our religious or faith-based community, if you and that institution, if you all have common beliefs, if that person is someone that can hold space in a non-judgmental way, that can also work. But you have to be able to do it. You have to run the risk of showing up. It's almost as though you have to risk losing to win. So taking this step and putting yourself out there is scary, because you're dealing with the possibility that this person might not like me, this might not work. I don't want to rack up my numbers. Like, we have all of these stories in our head keeping us back from being authentic. I prefer to have something fake so that people wouldn't say this. Sometimes we stay in relationships way past the expiration date because what people go say and how we go look. So it's about really asking yourself, what do you value? What do you really value at the end of the day? The best version of you, working towards a better version of you with somebody who's willing to walk that walk with you. And you have to be honest to access that. Honesty is the key. Yeah. And you might put yourself out there and you might get rejected, but now we can move on. Sometimes you don't realize that a breakup, a separation is a gift. You know, that person, you exit, you opt out, and you realize this is not the thing. That is as much a gift as finding the person that you're really ready to ride with.
And in terms of that access that you would have spoken about, how do individuals engage the professionals that you manage? And I asked that question, and also tell the person, to speak to the person who said, I'm not sure if this is for me, you know. I'm busy, a professional, and romance will sort out itself.
Yes. So the other thing is, do you want romance or do you want to start building a meaningful relationship? Because romance, in and of itself, romance is kind of performative, right? But a meaningful relationship means that things are not always sweet and lovely. And that's not, sometimes the ickiness of it, that's the real work. And that is often not romantic. But if you want to reach out to us, we can be reached. You can usually call us at 347-1042, or you can email us at help@Wholeness and Wellness Counseling Services. We're also you can find us on the internet as well. And the first thing we do is a 15-minute consultation, because we understand that you want to get to know more, about what this is, what it will entail. So we do that consultation. During that consultation, you can ask specifically about what would your preference be, because sometimes we connect with different people. So you might want to explore that. Just explore if this is a good fit for you. The other thing I think, and this is not only if you come to Wholeness and Wellness, but if you go to any professional counselor, you need to understand that you are buying a service, right? So you want to ask questions about this person. You want to find out, what's this person's training? Have they been doing this a long time? Don't be afraid to ask those questions. And really, therapy works when it works for you and you're really the expert on you. You're the expert if something is working. Sometimes people, the same issues they're having in their relationships where they commit to something and they feel they need to follow it through, they transfer that into therapy. So you don't want to do that either. You want to ask yourself, is this working for me? So interview your therapist, ask the questions, just as you would interview and ask questions about a service that you're asking for. We really need to start destigmatizing mental health and really treating it as a service.
And hopefully this is something that we can, I like Oliver, twist. May I have some more? So hopefully we can schedule to have another conversation and do the work towards the stigmatizing, because it is overdue. And with that in mind, we want to thank you so much, Dr. Tracie Rogers, Managing Director, Wholeness and Wellness Counselling, speaking about the psychology of love. And we want to thank you for tuning into In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you for joining us.
Cause I really feel a vibe every time we set the right down. And nobody like this, man, it's nothing like this, and it's nothing like you. Nothing and nobody like you. And every single time we touch, no one ever wanna stop, because I always wanna let you know that I love you so much, it's nobody like you. Nothing and nobody like you. Make me ball out, whoa, say whoa, oh, 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 oh. Long time this I overdue. Long time this I overdue. Make me ball out, whoa, oh, 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 oh. Long time this I overdue. Long time this I overdue. Because you're special to me. Special to me. Very special. Very special.